have to, though.
Well,
bitch, I knew who you were before you even knew who I was.
I'm a showgirl and an entertainer, I would say.
You suck.
Jeffrey Bowman.
Well, let's not get into money. I don't think he want to talk about money. So, how do I put this? Because I don't want to say get too many, because I know he doesn't like to talk. I don't know what he talked to you about, but he doesn't like to get too much detail about money because then the IRS going to be like, wait a minute now. He ain't a businessman, he's a businessman, and he's nothing giving you the business, man.
When I don't know, I'm not good at time, but it was somewhere in the early '80s, and I moved here to become a playwright. No, I was already a playwright. Excuse me. And at Cal State Fullerton, they had produced a bunch of plays of mine, and I had done some other stuff in Orange County. I was from Orange County, and so I decided to move to LA because I was going to become a movie writer, and I was very naive. I just thought I could write a movie and then it would be made, you know. So, but I had to work, so that's how I got the job originally at Revolver, because my friend Joey, who had lived in Orange County, worked there. So I went and saw him and asked him if, you know, they could hire me as like bar back or something like that. And I started out as a waiter at Revolver. I was a cocktail waiter. It was very challenging. I have all kinds of memories about Revolver. It was amazing because it was LA's first video nightclub, and MTV had just been created. So people were just so into videos, and there were just giant video screens everywhere. And you know, like Cyndi Lauper would come in, and Boy George would come in, and you know, and celebrities would hang out there, and it was the place to be. There was a video nightclub in New York, and this one, they were the only ones. So I felt very fortunate to work there. But it was a bar, you know, and back in those days, I mean, you know, maybe the same now, it's hard to, you know, work in a bar because they're very crowded and there's all kinds of things going on. But the money was really good. That was a good thing. I knew Joey already when I went to Revolver because I knew him from Orange County. So we were friends. And you know, we were like bar friends, and we you know, we partied, and he was crazy. He was really crazy. He was scrawny too, but everybody loved him because he just had this really big personality, and he was buying everybody shots all the time, and you know, he didn't give a shit what anybody thought of him, and he just everybody wanted, like when Joey bartended, everybody came to his station because, you know, he was very entertaining.
Can you tell me your most fond memory of Joey?
No, because it's very sexual. Let me think. I can't. I don't know that I could say. I don't know. There wasn't one like thing that stood out. You know. I mean, I always worried about Joey because he didn't eat right, and he never slept, and he really partied a lot, and he drank a lot, and he did a lot of drugs. And he started getting skinnier, but you know, I don't know, we just thought it was, you know, he was getting skinny. But then he went to the doctor, and they diagnosed him with, they said it was amoebas and tuberculosis. And I remember him, like I saw him down in the office one day, and he had brought a sandwich, and he could like barely eat the sandwich, and it was just really like, I don't know, I mean, we were concerned. This is the thing that you have to know, is that right then nobody knew what was coming. So when Joey got sick, we were just like, oh, well, you know, he'll get better. That's just the way that life was for everybody up to that point.
That was delicious and a big bikini. All right, I'm going to give you some rules. Our rules are very fun and very easy. Before we start each game, we're going to yell out, what's the name of the game? You're going to yell bingo. Then we're going to say how we play, and you're going to say loudly. Let's try that. What's the name of the game? Bingo! And how do we play it? Loudly! Good. Now I know you may be thinking, I'm turning 50, or there's a sheep in the restaurant. If you call a false bingo because you're not paying attention, there's a punishment for that, and it looks like this.
So drunk they can't even find a seat. Hi, what's your name? Jose, we took a picture earlier. And you know what we're going to do now? We're going to spank your ass because it's the false bingo! We're playing BL, so you need all the music all here. We'll take this back, but you can still play. But we need to go and have you grab onto the back of that chair. Grab onto that chair. You know what? Come over here because I want to film this and all. She's sitting here. Grab onto this table. How about that? Get your ass right here. How about we can both have some of that ass? That's a lot of ass to have. We want to share it. Okay, but your ass gotta face this way so we can hit it. Okay, but you gotta bend over too because we want all of it. Thank you. On the count of three, we're all saying no false bingos ever. 1, 2, 3. No false bingos ever. The last person that sat there, I slapped her in the mouth. I got your shoulder. You all right? Okay. That bitch almost saved me. Okay. Oh, you can sit down. We're done with you.
Keep playing.
Okay. Next time we'll have you move. Sorry.
Well,
I knew who you were before you even knew who I was.
I'm a showgirl and an entertainer, I would say. I got some side gigs, not nothing X-rated, but I'm a showgirl and an entertainer.
Oh. She's the famous Calpurnia Adams, everybody.
Google it.
her. Seriously. I'm Roxy Wood. I have been performing, doing bingo for about 10 years. But I mean, I sing live, drag entertainer, all that fun stuff. I'm also a trans actress. I've been on a bunch of TV shows. Google me as well, Roxy Wood. Yes.
She has an amazing voice. Oh. You should be like in pop stardom already.
Deal.
But do it.
Right.
How did you guys first get into drag?
Come on, you call this drag?
Well, I think it's really great to talk about because I'm a trans woman and I identify as a woman, but I started, many years ago, pre-transition, performing in the queer community, LGBT community, doing what people would call drag. I don't identify as a drag queen now, but I'm definitely exaggerating the look and everything.
She knows how to put it on.
Just like Dolly Parton does, or
Beyonce.
Beyonce, anybody. I consider myself a showgirl now. What about you?
Same. The same thing, yeah. I mean, trans woman by day, slut by night. No, but drag, whatever. I mean, drag is just an overextension of what you're already doing in a way.
Right, and women can do drag too.
Yes,
they do. Yeah.
Okay, this shit ain't real.
Right.
Right? It's not real. Oh. Well, I guess it is now.
Yeah, it's ours. We got the receipts.
It's real, but it's not real. It's an illusion. See, it's an illusion. So she's saying for the paycheck, she'll be whatever the hell you want her to be, okay?
Yeah, sure.
But you gotta write that check.
You got a paycheck, I got a job. So.
Oh, same.
And what does dressing in drag mean and do for you?
It pays, dressing in drag pays the bills, okay?
As for the drag queens, they put a smile on our face. They always did. Come on, the drag queens were always there. They were always around. There has always been drag. There's been drag for decades and decades. But now it's as though they had a job. It's not that they felt that there was, but they entertained us. They kept us happy. They helped us to forget. We would go to probe. We would ask where was so-and-so, and they'd be in the hospital. But there'd be a drag queen there that would entertain us, that would get up with a fan and start to fan dance, or just be ridiculous for some strange reason. And that strange reason just put a smile on our faces. So yeah, I consider both our lesbian community and the drag queen community very vital in a part of the beginning of AIDS, because we were searching for straws. We didn't have a whole lot of support. It garnered, but it took time. there was more fear and there was more anger and there was more disgust than there was compassion and hope. And even in the medical community, they were afraid to touch us. They were afraid to get near. Sometimes we would go into the hospital to see friends, and as we were leaving after our visit, we'd walk by a room and we'd see an acquaintance that we might know, but we're never close to, and they'd be shivering from pneumonia. So we'd crawl into bed with them and just spoon them and just hold on to them so they could get warm and they could fall asleep. Occasionally nurses would come in and they'd be shocked and they would understand and they would, if you need anything, let us know. Those were the real compassionate nurses. And then there was the ones that wore the masks and that were constantly afraid, more so for their own well-being. And I can't say I blame them. I understand, I was as well. But if a bunch of guys in a bunch of dresses can put smiles on people's faces through a crisis, and I hope it's around in my life for as long as I stand on this earth.
You know, when a lot of people look back at the 80s and they look back at how fun it was, you know, everything was new. Like I said, videos were new. City West Hollywood was just becoming a city, and everything was very exciting and looking toward the future. And then, you know, all of a sudden you realize, you look at the rose sometimes and you forget about the thorns, and basically we experienced the thorns firsthand.
The most impactful person that really struck a nerve was a bartender who took the back bar, Joey Marzo. Joey, who we deemed as Gidget, because he was bouncy. He was kind of a staple for us and for the clientele that came in. Everybody loved Joey. He was adorable. He was very sweet and very wonderful. Probably one of the most sarcastic, squirrely little people you could ever come across. But he got it, and he got it bad. I do remember visiting him and seeing him on ventilators and still smoking cigarettes. And I wanted to say something, but it wasn't my journey, you know? I didn't want to be a nag. I just wanted to be a supportive friend. But I do remember Jeffrey was with us. We had a night manager. His name was James, I believe. And I was working the back bar and I was at full tilt. In other words, I'd probably downed a couple of double espressos and I was really rocking and rolling. In other words, the back bar was packed. It usually was. And the door opened and I got this. And he said, Joey died. Oh, God, what are we talking about? 30, 35 years later, and it still strikes a chord. So, the entrance to the back bar was through a refrigerator, through a walk-in refrigerator. So you had to go in the refrigerator, into the refrigerator, and then out another door of the refrigerator to get to the back bar. So as I was sitting there crying and in shock, he grabbed me and he said, "You stay here until you're ready, and then go out." It took quite a while because I can't say it was my first friend that died of AIDS. I've held many as they've taken their last breath, laid in bed with them, held them in my arms, told them to let go. This was different. This was First of all, he caught me at a really crap time, okay? I'm working my ass off over at the bar. I'm trying to be cordial. I'm trying to be friendly and fun and up. And, you know, we didn't shove liquor down people's faces. We put on a bloody show, okay? We entertained the troops, as we put it. So we gave it our all. It wasn't just a boring job to us. We would literally, bartenders would play with bartenders and make ridiculous just to get a laugh out of our patrons, you know, and they would come back, you know, and they would want more. And Joey was part of that comedic routine, as there were many of them that I got to work with. So it stung. Really, really hard. And it got around the bar really fast. It didn't take long ever for the word, quote unquote, of somebody's passing or somebody's death to get around. We didn't need cyberspace. We had each other.
But it was very much an evolution. It was very much an evolution of like, you lose somebody, and then all of a sudden you start losing more and more and more, and then they tell you, oh, well, this is what this is, and this is affecting gay men in the community, and there's nothing that we can do about it.
Just for the sake of people, when asked about AIDS, I speak to kids every once in a while, you know, they, as a person living with AIDS or HIV, so they can ask me questions. But a lot of them don't know what HIV stands for or AID stands for. They just know it's bad, okay? But information is really important. It's not just power. It's humanizing something. It's taking something that is just a thing, like a handkerchief, you know, and equating it to a human being. And that's what this is about. HIV, human immunodeficiency virus. AIDS, acquired immunodeficiency virus. You acquire muscle wasting. You acquire thrush. You acquire all of these things that I had talked to you about, that I had experienced. Dementia, pneumocystis pneumonia, a Kaposi sarcoma, the blood disease that people see on their arms, on their faces, all over their bodies, even in their throats and their rectums. So it's just something that there's still ignorance about because there's so much apathy that nobody seems to really get it. But to be able to try and create, which is, as I put it in medical terms, homeostasis, you know, which is the perfect balance of a body, okay, just to paraphrase, okay. HIV affects everything. It affects your hormonal system. It affects your triglycerides. You can throw your blood sugar out of whack. It can take your cholesterol and create plaque in your body. And it can make it easy to bring on the onset of herpes, which done through rectal sex can create a condyloma in the rectum, which is a wart, which is a form of, okay? So the whole idea is to try and keep everything at bay. So there is a drug to increase testosterone. There is an HIV medication that goes once a day. This also includes a protease inhibitor in it. Remind me to tell you about the drug the doctor took me off of. Okay, we'll get to that later. Then that is in combination with another medication and in combination with another medication, both of which have side effects. So all three of those are giving me side effects as well. Wait, it gets better. Then there is the herpes control, which is Zovirax. So that's taken once a day. Then there's the vitamin B12 injections, which help to keep my triglycerides at bay. So the numbers stay great. And they really do, and it works. And that's something that the insurance company isn't noticing. They force me to pay for that. They will not cover it, but it works. It helps to counterbalance all the drugs that they're paying for. So what does that tell you? They don't want you to get better with something that they're paying for? Think about it. It doesn't make any sense to me. If I have to get this at a prescription, and I have to get this at a prescription at 400, this is $400. This is 40. Wait. This is 1,200. This creates the triglyceride rise. This is 40. This lowers that triglyceride. So again, that makes no sense to me coming from a medical insurance perspective. Okay. Again, this is just a hypothetical question to you. Could you explain this to me? So you asked me what I'm doing for a living? That's my full-time job, yeah, and I want to work outside of that. So that's the conundrum. You see, we're given this, which was once death sentence, and now we're given a life sentence, but there's a price to pay for that life sentence. And people don't understand the dynamics of that life sentence in that there are things you have to do to be able to maintain this stasis, to be able to be just like you and everybody else and be like any other person walking on the earth. Yes, as opposed to Mr. Bowman, I have a lot of heroes in my life. Some are really young, some are really, really old, you know, and some are in between, you know. And I'm fortunate that after all these years that Jeffrey and I can look at each other and say, we're still here, and look what we're doing. And it's not that we're trying to leave our mark or leave our name in cement, it's that we're alive and we're here and we are able to do something, if not for people maybe to learn by example and to dialogue.
After all of the people that we know were getting sick and dying and it was just sort of surrounding us, they all of a sudden had people from health organizations coming over and giving us seminars on how you get AIDS and how you don't get AIDS, because it was a lot of really, you know, misinformation. Everybody, you can't even imagine. It was crazy. Like you just looked at everyone around you like, oh, am I going to get it from them touching me? It's like, this is really like a full-blown epidemic, but no one knew how they were getting it. And so when they finally came out and said, you know, you get it through the exchange of bodily fluids and all of that, and they were starting to form these organizations, the next thing that I felt like needed doing was we needed to start raising money for these organizations. So I started doing these really weird, crappy little shows at Revolver with people like Angeline, who's she's famous, the Billboard Queen here in LA. And she's just, you know, nobody had seen her in person, and I got her to show up in person and packed the place and, you know, gave all the money to the AIDS Project Los Angeles. And so that was my way, that's how it started. My response to losing my friends and having the whole world crumble around me was, I just thought, well, let's just fight it. Let's do something to make it better. And that's how this all like sort of started in my path toward, you know, even now, what I do now. It all started in that I was there at this time when people just died, just ended. I will never not be grateful for this, all of this. It kind of worked against me in a certain way because I have always kept myself not working a 9 to 5 because I wanted to write, and you know, I always told myself I was going to be a famous writer and, you know, playwright, or I was going to be writing movies, and I've had some, you know, interesting almost, you know, in that area. And so this to me was a great way of, you know, making some money and staying free. And unfortunately, it's gotten so big that it takes up all of my time. It's like a 9 to 5 for me. And even though I don't do as many of the events as I used to at Hamburger Mary's, because my parents died last year, different times, and something, I don't know, all of a sudden I just didn't want to do it. I mean, and again, when I'm up there and I'm doing it, I have so much fun, and I love it, and I love that people are having a good time and they're raising money for charity, and it's like, like the feel in the room is always like just this wonderful, community feeling. But I just didn't feel like putting myself out there for everybody like that. I just didn't have it as much. So at this point, again, I'm concentrating at this point. I have people doing the shows. They're wonderful. It doesn't suffer. I would never do a less than show just because I didn't feel like doing it. But I'm concentrating more on what's the future of it, and the future in having merchandise, and I signed a deal for a game show, for a TV game show, and I meet people all the time that I just met a guy last night who was like, I want to take your merchandise, and so I'm concentrating on the more of the framework of the business to keep the business going, and because honest to God, I don't see any reason why it just couldn't go on forever, As we get old and die off, there would just be new drag queens coming, So that's honestly, I still love it. I love doing it, but my focus is not the same as it was in the beginning.